Marcus paid $22 million for a shopping mall, and the scariest part is that the price was fair. 41 years old, a dentist who'd spent 15 years building a portfolio of rental houses. The kind of guy who tracks every expense in a color-coded spreadsheet and drives a 9-year-old Lexus he refuses to replace. In 2023, he and 2 partners did what every real estate investor dreams about. They went big, a 400,000 square foot enclosed mall in a mid-sized city, bought at a discount from a tired institutional owner. Marcus told his wife it was the deal of a lifetime, and honestly, looking at the numbers he had that day, most of us would have signed too. By the end of this video, you'll know 3 things. 1. Exactly how a mall makes and loses money, the actual math, income, expenses, and the strange formula that sets its price. 2. The single hidden clause buried in mall leases that can vaporize millions of dollars of value in one afternoon. It's the reason mall fortunes collapse in chain reactions, not slow declines. And 3. A 5-question framework for evaluating any income property, from a duplex to a retail center, so you never buy a building the way Marcus did. This channel exists to run the real math on money decisions before you risk a dollar on them. So if that's useful to you, subscribe now so you don't miss the next breakdown. Now let's talk about the myth that hooked Marcus, because it's probably hooked you too. The myth says malls are dying, so buying one cheap is a bargain. E-commerce killed them, the headlines wrote the obituary, so anything still standing must be underpriced. It sounds like contrarian genius. Here's the thing, it's half right, and the half that's wrong is where the $22 million went to work. First, understand what Marcus actually bought, because a mall is not a building, and this is the mental shift everything else depends on. A mall is a portfolio of dozens of small businesses wearing one roof. Marcus's mall had over 80 tenants, 2 big anchor department stores paying almost nothing per square foot, because anchors are there to pull crowds, not rent, and 80-some smaller inline stores paying the real money, boutiques, phone shops, food court counters, a gym. The income math on day 1 looked like this. Roughly $3.1 million a year in rent and fees flowing in. Operating expenses, security, cleaning, heating and cooling a giant glass box, insurance, property taxes, management, ate about $1.3 million. What's left is called net operating income, NOI, the single most important number in commercial real estate, and Marcus's mall produced $1.8 million of it. And here's where commercial property gets weird, because the price of the whole asset hangs off that one number through something called a cap rate. A cap rate is just NOI divided by price, the yield the market demands for owning that stream of income. Mall properties in major U.S. cities have traded around a 6% cap rate in recent years, and at Marcus's price, $22 million for $1.8 million of NOI, he bought at roughly an 8% cap, better than the average, which is exactly why it felt like a steal. Hold on to that formula, price equals NOI divided by cap rate, because it's about to become a horror movie. It means every single dollar of income the mall gains or loses gets multiplied by 12 or more when it hits the property's value. The building isn't priced like a house, it's priced like a machine, strictly on what the machine produces. Month 6, and the machine was humming. Occupancy sat around 90%, checks cleared, the partners toasted. Marcus felt what every new mall owner feels, that he'd outsmarted the doom headlines. And to be fair to him, the doom headlines really are overcooked. Malls still contribute an estimated $550 billion to U.S. GDP every year, and 2/3 of millennial and Gen Z shoppers say they prefer malls for the social experience. The corpse keeps shopping. But while Marcus was toasting, something invisible was already moving against him, and this is where I need you to see why smart people walk into this exact trap. It's not stupidity, it's that residential instincts don't transfer. In houses, Marcus's world, a vacancy is a contained event, one empty unit, one missing rent check. Fix it, re-rent it. His brain priced risk that way, additively. Mall risk isn't additive, it's contagious. Tenants are economically wired to each other, and nothing on the rent roll he reviewed at purchase showed him those wires. And the sellers know this, that's the uncomfortable part. Institutional owners rarely dump a stabilized, healthy mall at a discount. The discount usually exists precisely because someone with better information has already seen the wires fraying, and the buyer's job is to figure out what they saw. Marcus never asked why a sophisticated seller was so eager. He was too busy congratulating himself on the price. Year 1 closed with a letter. One of his 2 anchor department stores, part of a struggling national chain, announced it was closing 300 locations, including his. Painful, sure, but Marcus ran the numbers and exhaled. The anchor paid barely $200,000 a year in rent, about 10% of NOI, survivable, annoying, not fatal. He budgeted for a slow year and moved on. That calm lasted exactly 1/4, because Marcus was about to meet the clause I promised you. The one buried in his inline tenants' leases, the one his lawyer had flagged in a memo nobody fully read. It's called a co-tenancy clause. A co-tenancy clause says, in plain English, I only agreed to pay premium rent because the anchor store drives foot traffic past my door, so if the anchor leaves or overall occupancy drops below a set threshold, I get to pay reduced rent, sometimes half, sometimes a percentage of my sales, or walk away from my lease entirely. Dozens of Marcus's inline tenants had some version of it. The anchor went dark in March. By summer, 14 tenants had triggered co-tenancy relief, rents cut in half, and 4 more simply left. Foot traffic fell, so sales fell for everyone who stayed. So 2 struggling stores closed at their lease expirations rather than renew. Every closure pushed occupancy lower, which triggered more co-tenancy thresholds, which cut more rent. One department store's exit had detonated a chain reaction across 80 leases. Think of a mall as a string of Christmas lights wired in series, not parallel. In your house rentals, parallel wiring, one bulb dies, the rest shine on. In a mall, series wiring, pull one anchor bulb and the current weakens through the entire strand. Marcus hadn't bought 80 separate income streams, he'd bought one interconnected organism, and the organism was sick. Now watch the horror of that pricing formula. By the end of year 2, NOI had fallen from 1.8 million to 1.1 million. Run the machine math at the same 8% cap rate, the property was now worth under $14 million, and worse, buyers demand higher cap rates for troubled malls. At a 10% cap, the value was $11 million. The mall had lost half its value while the building itself stood completely unchanged. Same bricks, same parking lot, same roof. If that chain reaction just changed how you look at every dying mall for sale headline, hit like, it takes 1 second and genuinely helps. This is the point where most videos would roll credits on a cautionary tale, but the data says something more interesting because the mall story in America has split into 2 completely different movies, and Marcus was only starring in one of them. The numbers are stark. At the start of 2026, the average U.S. mall vacancy rate was 8.8%, roughly double the vacancy of retail space overall. But slice malls by quality and the fog clears, Class A malls, the fortress properties doing over $500 in sales per square foot, sit at just 5.6% vacancy, Class B malls around 9%, and Class C malls, the tired ones under $300 per square foot, at over 13%. Meanwhile, according to reporting from the 2026 ICSC Industry Conference, institutional money is calling malls back in vogue. Occupancy is rising at the top, and almost no new retail has been built in years. No new enclosed megamall has opened in America since 2019. Scarcity at the top, decay at the bottom, one word, malls, 2 opposite investments. And the exits aren't symmetrical either. The average vacant mall that sells goes for 43% below its prior acquisition price, and closed malls sit empty for nearly 4 years on average. But nearly half of mall redevelopments are being converted to mixed use, apartments, medical offices, gyms, logistics, because the land under a dying mall is often worth more than the mall on top of it. So the honest answer to "are malls a bargain?" is, the question is broken. Nobody buys malls, you buy one specific machine with specific tenants, specific lease clauses, specific sales per square foot, and a specific position in its local food chain. Class matters more than category. Back to Marcus, year 3, because he had a decision to make with 3 doors. Door 1, sell into distress and eat the 40+% loss. Door 2, feed the machine, spend millions repositioning, chase new anchors, gyms, clinics, grocery, entertainment, the tenants that actually sign leases in this decade. Door 3, stop thinking like a mall owner entirely and start thinking like a land owner, pursue rezoning for mixed-use redevelopment. The partners fought, then blended 2 doors. They used a hard-won lesson. The anchor box was theirs free and clear, so they carved it into a medical clinic and a discount gym, tenants that generate their own traffic instead of borrowing the malls, and critically, tenants whose leases carry no co-tenancy dependence. They signed a grocery operator for a dead wing, and they hired a land use attorney to begin entitling the back parking field, 11 acres of asphalt, for future apartments. Notice what every one of those moves has in common. Each one rewires a piece of the mall from series back to parallel, Tenants that stand on their own traffic. Income streams that don't share a single fuse. That's not luck, that's the entire modern playbook. It's why nearly half of mall redevelopments nationally are going mixed use. It took 2 painful years and another $2 million of capital. By the end of year 5, NOI had climbed back to about $1.5 million, still below day 1, but the income was structurally healthier, less dependent on any single tenant, and the entitled land added value the old mall never had. Marcus estimates the whole position is worth roughly what they paid, 5 years of stress to get back to even. He'll tell you straight, he didn't win, he survived, and survival was only possible because the location was fundamentally good. A Class C mall in a shrinking town has no door 3. Quick but important note, this is education, not financial advice. Commercial real estate is intensely local and deal-specific, so always do your own research and bring professionals into any real transaction. Now, the framework, 5 questions that would have saved Marcus, and they scale down to any income property you'll ever consider, a duplex, a strip center, anything. Question 1, what is the real NOI, and what happens to the price if it drops 20%? Run the cap rate math yourself, price equals NOI divided by cap rate. Then stress it, if a one-time bad year cuts income 20%, your value can fall by millions. Know that number before you sign, not after. Question 2, how is the income wired, series or parallel? Read every major lease for co-tenancy clauses, termination rights, and expiration dates that cluster in the same year. 10 tenants who can all leave for the same reason are not 10 tenants. They're one giant tenant wearing 10 costumes. Question 3, who generates the traffic and what happens if they stop? Any property where most tenants depend on one anchor, one employer, one highway exit, carries a hidden single point of failure, price that risk in or walk. Question 4, what is the exit if the machine breaks? In other words, what is the land worth naked? Marcus survived because his dirt had a second life as apartments. A property with a credible alternate use has a floor under it. A property without one can fall much further than any spreadsheet predicts. And question 5, are you buying the asset or the story about the asset? Malls are dying, so this is cheap is a story. Sales per square foot, lease terms, and local demographics are the asset. The market eventually pays for the asset, never for the story. Here's the part 1 want you to carry out of this video. Marcus's disaster and his recovery came from the exact same source, the brutal honesty of that little formula, price equals income divided by the market's required yield. It punished him without mercy when income unraveled, and it rewarded him dollar for dollar when he rebuilt the income with sturdier tenants. Commercial real estate has no feelings, no nostalgia for food courts, no fear from headlines, it just prices the machine's output, which means anyone, including you, who learns to read the machine honestly is playing with the lights on while the story buyers play in the dark. You don't need $22 million for this lesson to pay you. The next time you evaluate any investment property or honestly any income-producing asset at all, run the 5 questions, what's the true income, how is it wired, who drives the traffic, what's the naked exit, and am I buying math or a story? 30 minutes with those questions is worth more than any hot take you'll ever hear about whether malls are dead. So here's my question for the comments, and I read every single one. Would you ever buy a struggling mall if the land had redevelopment potential? Or is that a headache no discount can cure? Team reposition or team stay away? And subscribe before you go, because in an upcoming video I'm breaking down the economics of owning an apartment building, where the income is wired completely differently, and you'll see exactly why the wiring, not the building, is always the real investment. See you there.